Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, live at Park Theater. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Nick Brock, and that is Shawn Skinner.
How we doing tonight? Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Happy Father's Day. And we are thrilled that you would take the time out of your busy schedule, your Father's Day plans, to help us create deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. So through our conversations, we hope to bring curiosity, nuance, grace, and humor, and perhaps we'll learn something along the way.
Did you say nuance of grace or nuance race?
Nuance and grace.
Okay.
Nuance and grace.
Just clarifying.
And maybe we'll learn something along the way. Let's see here. During the evening's first segment, we will have the privilege of being in conversation with author, pastor, and social activist Doug Pagitt. Doug is the executive director of Vote Common Good and is a leading voice for progressive Christianity. We'll be talking about our shared experience when he and I went down to the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. So that'll be a fun segment. This is Doug has joined the podcast before, and we've talked about immigration. So this
will be his third time on the podcast with us.
I think so. And you
First
got to
time in person.
In person.
In person.
Yeah, that was super exciting, right?
In person. Woo.
In
Better.
person. Yes, hand clap. And so then after that, we'll move into our second segment with Sarah Leach. Now, Sarah is a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist and the former executive editor with the Holland Sentinel until she was recently fired. If you didn't know about that, she was fired about a month ago, really unexpectedly. And I'll let Sarah explain what that all means. And then Mitchell Boatman, who has been with the Holland Sentinel since 2018, he'll be talking about Ottawa Impact. We'll be talking about the importance of covering Ottawa Impact, the challenges of that, and we'll talk about what's going on with Sarah. And then during our final segment, you'll hear from Common Good candidate. He's here in the back. Thanks for being here super early. He's ready to mingle with his voters. That would be Chris Crothers, Democrat from Zeeland, and he is running to become an Ottawa County Commissioner in District 5. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it means, a little hand clap, what it means to be a Common Good candidate in Ottawa County when I would say that in terms when it comes to the Ottawa Impact, the Common Good is not in their repertoire. So that's the evening. That's the plan that we have for you. But before we dive into any of that, I got to give a shout out for a Happy Father's Day. Any fathers in here? Myself included. Happy Father's Day, and Happy Father's Day to you, Shawn.
Happy Father's Day to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
You know something? I think we're getting gypped. I don't think we should get a day. I think we should get a month like everybody else.
Get a month?
A month.
Oh.
We're helping mold the society of the future. And we get a day? Just a day? Same thing with mothers?
I feel like I get a day all the
I think
time.
we put a little bit more work in than some others, and we only get a day.
Are you going to go on record on that? So when
I think I just did.
Your
I don't
wife,
think I have a choice. It's out there now.
Yeah, when the wife hears about that, is she going to agree with you 100%, or is there going to be a little
I bet
bit
you
of
she'd
difference?
love to have a month.
Yeah, but we're talking about you. Talking about you having a whole month. And you've got twin girls who are how old? Six?
They're 6.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me this lovely bluey shirt today, so I had to wear it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they'd be upset with me.
That's a great shirt. That is a funny program, too.
Though, sometimes just one day is too much, though, too.
One day is
Daddy,
too much.
we want to make you breakfast. We want to do this, which is all lovely, and I love it. But on the other hand, sometimes it's just you're making a mess. You're going to make Mom angry, and it's going to be my fault because it's my day.
Well, did you do anything today? Did you do anything special?
Yeah, we got the boat out today, finally.
Okay.
We got to go do a little bit of riding, but most of the part, it's typical putting the boat in because in the Skinner household, everything has an issue no matter how far up the chain you actually try to prepare for something.
Right.
I worked on the motor a week and a half ago, made sure everything was all set, started the motor, back to the boat, put in the water, and I floated off on the boat, and then the motor died. And I had to find her on the other side of the public access ramp and figure out what was wrong. A raccoon or something got up and ate the the fuel line. So it ran on whatever fuel was in the motor and then died off. So then I had to go get a knife from a neighbor and cut the line and shorten it and put it back together.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you know it was a raccoon, though?
Oh, it's an animal of some sort.
An animal of some sort.
There. How's it
Okay.
better? Muskrats tend to do that a lot on lakes.
Well, because
It wasn't at a lake, it was at my shop. So
Okay, but if I recall this, we did an episode maybe a month or so ago where you had an encounter with another backyard animal, a skunk, and
yeah, that was a couple months ago.
that was confirmed.
Yep. And then I caught a not a groundhog, but that might have been a muskrat. Woodchuck. It was a woodchuck, and he was pissed.
Okay.
And it was not nice. But I was less afraid of him than I was a skunk because I could get close to him in the cage.
Okay, a skunk, a woodchuck,
Woodchuck, yes.
and now a raccoon.
Well, it's assumed raccoon.
Maybe.
But that wasn't at the house, though. That was at the shop.
All
Completely
right.
different area.
Well, so anyways,
I
you
thought
got
I was safe at the shop, but apparently I'm not.
you got the boat in the water. And
We
Did you go out boating,
We
or-
boated for about an hour or so.
Okay,
and then we
beautiful
had
day for
to
boating.
come back and start getting ready because apparently we got a podcast on Father's Day. Who booked it that way?
Yeah, nobody has plans on Father's Day.
No, nobody has plans.
except us.
You know who has plans on Father's Day? The moms. Because they're the ones trying to plan everything out for you. And sometimes you just want to tell them, I just want to sit on the couch and relax.
Yeah. Well, so my wife put together a lovely little breakfast: crepes, eggs, sausage,
Ooh, crepes sound good.
and I got a little gift from my 8-year-old Wyatt. So
I
thank
bet
you.
it was not nearly as cool as my shirt, though.
Thank you. You haven't said thank you to your significant other. Thank you to my significant other
I said
for all that.
thank you
Oh,
in person.
boy. Hey,
Yeah, hey.
Shawn, this is exciting news. We have a supporter of the podcast, and this will be the first episode where we can run a promo ad for this.
You mean a sponsor?
Yeah, like a sponsor ad to promote the product. The product is Rethink Nutrition. So I got a little story here about this Rethink Nutrition bar. So when I was heading out to Mexico to go on the U.S.-Mexico border trip, I had to go to the airport super early, as you do, at like 4 in the morning. So I reserved an Uber ride to pick me up. So the Uber shows up, 4 a.m., right outside, good to go. Now, as I try to get into the Uber, I'm having problems because what kind of car is it? It's a Tesla. I've never,
So you're
ever,
saving the environment. Good job. Good on you.
I am and he is, but I have never ridden in a Tesla, let alone touched one. So I'm trying to open the door,
You see,
and the
you make that
problem
sound so
is
negative. Like I've never touched one. I don't want it. It's dirty.
well,
They actually look really clean to me.
they are, and this one was, but the handle,
Yeah, it pops out or
does
something.
does not stick out, or like it's smooth along the body. And so I was like trying to open the door. I was like, how does this thing go? How does it work? And the guy started to put down the window, but then I eventually figured it out. But the Tesla, that is a nice ride. A great ride all the way to the airport. If you get a chance to get an Uber with a Tesla, take that up.
Is that an option in Uber? Can you pick? You know,
No,
I
I
want to
think
be
you just
picked up
get lucky.
5:30. Sports car.
I think you just get lucky.
Ferrari.
It was the Uber X, where you pay a little bit
It
more.
wasn't the Cybertruck. That would have been cool.
No, I have seen that thing hanging around town.
Yeah, I did see one the other day.
Thing looks
That's the
like
first time I've seen it in person. It looks like something you'd see in Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. But here's a little story. So I get to the airport, and before I board the plane, I got a little hungry. So I was like, I want to make sure that I have something to eat on the plane or along the way if something goes awry. So I saw these Rethink Nutrition bars. So I grabbed one, and I said to my friend, hey, your bars are at the airport. Check this out. This is really great. So now, here is where I get to do the little sponsor part.
Let's see.
So-
Let's hear this thing. First shot out the gate.
First time.
Here we
So
go.
this is thanks to Rethink Nutrition for making a meal replacement bar made from only the good stuff, sourced locally in West Michigan farms, like stone ground sprouted oats, natural peanut butter, organic blueberries, pecans, wildflower honey, organic cherries, organic apricots, and pea protein powder, all to boost your mind and body naturally. So the real special thing for this, thank you, listener, be sure to get your first order 25% off by using the word good. That's G, all lowercase, GOOD at rethinknutrition.org. Thanks to our supporter at Rethink Nutrition.
The way that you're spelling good to me, I thought there was going to be like an extra O, good.
No, it's because it's super complicated. 4 letters. I just want to make sure that we really.
Well, we tend to do that
nail it.
sometimes, just make it super complicated.
I
How
know.
was that bar? I haven't tried it yet.
It's
You haven't
good.
given me any samples.
It's good. I know. I ran out of time to get the samples, but they're coming your way.
Oh, great.
All right.
What flavors? What flavors? What flavor did you
Apricots,
have?
blueberries, cherries. You know, think.
What
think of
one
that
did you
wheelhouse.
have, though, on the way to the airport?
I don't remember.
Okay, good sales pitch right there.
I eventually ate it. It was great. Go check them out. All right, friends, we got a lot of ground to cover. So we better get moving here. Let's take a long exhale and get focused up. Shawn, take a little sip of our drinky drink here. And let's have a round warm of applause for Doug Pagitt. Doug Pagitt's going to come on down, and he's going to get a little intro music because we're going to talk about our experience along the U.S.-Mexico border.
There's our buddy. Ooh, what are we drinking tonight?
The local lager.
Oh, nice.
Yes, had I known about the Rethink bar, I would have brought one.
That's right. It sounded pretty good, right?
It did sound great.
All locally sourced ingredients, all organic, and I know that we're all busy folks, and especially you being on the bus.
Yeah, we'd have those on the
in
bus.
the cohort. Yeah,
We would take a sponsorship. I've had to take those around the country with us.
yeah, that's right. You hear
Share
that?
common good bars with people all over the country.
Common good bars for the common good people, made by
Uncommonly good, common good bar.
you're just
There
a
you go.
wordsmith.
Jot that down for the next time.
Uncommonly good. All right, now we're gonna start this little segment out with some immigration trivia. Now, okay, listener, this is not going to work for the listener, but this is going to work for the audience. So I'm going to go through a couple different questions. I'll do 2 here, and then we'll talk a little bit, and then we'll do a couple other along the way. But if you get a question right, my lovely assistant there, or my smaller assistant wearing the backwards hat, will give you a Vote Common Good West Michigan sticker. But if you get all 3, or all of the questions right, you can have that sticker and a free shirt, and if you want to take a yard sign, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be upset. So, here we go. Have you looked at these answers?
Yeah. I glanced at them. I didn't want to look
Okay, so don't,
uninformed.
Don't give it away. All right, question number 1. What is the average amount of time an undocumented immigrant has lived in the United States?
Ooh, I got it.
You get a couple options.
I got it.
3 months, 2 years, 10 years, or 25 years. 3 months, 2 years, 10 years, or 25. Can I get let's do a raise of hands. Anybody think it's 3 months? Okay, I
saw
see
one hand.
I saw a half hand. 2 years, anybody? Okay, tide's growing. 10 years. More hands there. How about 25 years? All right, it looks like the crowd was going 10 years.
I can't see a thing, so.
What's your guess?
25 years.
25 years. What's your guess?
That was mine as well, yes.
25 years? The correct answer is 10 years.
Oh,
So the average
Fake
amount of
news.
That's what I
time...
get for following you, Doug.
fake news.
Fake news. I just made all these numbers up. So the actual number is 10, but it ranges from 10 to 14.
Well, you didn't put that in there. You just left it
Yeah.
at 10. You should have.
If
Because
you'd
14 is a
I
little
would have
closer
guessed
to 20.
14.
Yeah, you
I see
really
you
would
rigged
have
us
amped
there.
it up.
Fake news, right?
I know. We got to really be careful of what we got going on. All right, so remember, if you got that right, be sure to keep track of that. All right, next. The average native-born American receives about $8,000 in welfare benefits. Now, when it comes to immigrants receiving welfare benefits, do they receive a higher amount, a lower amount, or the same amount? So you're thinking about $8,000 a native-born American use for
Yeah, we
welfare.
should have had the Jeopardy
Yep, think about it. Time's up. Anybody who thinks that it's higher than 8,000? No hands. Lower than 8,000? Couple. We got Doug. Or the same amount? We got one. Do you have an answer, Shawn?
I raised it with lower.
Okay, lower.
I'm copying
The
Doug again, so if I get in
correct-
trouble, I can blame him one more time.
The correct answer is lower, $6,000. Now, be careful on this one. How much money do you think an undocumented immigrant receives? I'm just going to give it away right now.
Yeah, you should.
Just
It's
pick a
really
number.
quiet.
Pick it up. Zero.
$0.
$0.
Yeah.
Undocumented immigrants are not allowed to, don't have access to these benefits. All right. Anybody get those all right? Way in the back, way in the back. All right, you get all the things, the sticker, the shirt, and the yard sign.
Oh, wow.
A real generous
win.
program over here, real generous. All right, so we're going to talk about, I think that was, when you've done these immigration events and we've done these things, you've put out these trivia questions,
Yeah.
and it's just a really good way to kind of frame in and determine some facts between what is, out there a lot in the news. So, I found this really helpful. These a couple facts, they came from a book just put out here called The Truth About Immigration by Zeke Hernandez. You can find, he did an interview on the Freakonomics podcast. Really great. So you can check it out. They did a whole series of that. But before we get into talking about this, we're going to get into our impressions about the border wall. So there's a video that I have queued up for us. It was my first impressions of the border wall, and then we'll talk about that, and then we'll get some impressions from Doug as well. Okay, here are my first impressions of the wall. Upon seeing
You're big.
The wall itself and the barbed wire, and then the Border Patrol agents in the truck, it really just reminded me of being in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base when I was in the military. Just a defensive, fortified position. That's all this reminded me of. It reminded me of just being on the lookout and wanting to secure what was on my side of the wall. But here, what I unexpectedly came upon was on the other side, on the Mexico border, there are just a handful of people walking their dogs, going for a run, and just walking in the cool evening. It is 7 o'clock here, and it is a beautiful evening. And on the U.S. border side here, it's just a real desolate area. You can see that this road goes on for miles, but yet right on the other side of the wall is a community. And people, I know you can't see them now, but there's a sidewalk here, and I witnessed just a handful of people just strolling about. And I did not expect to see that at all. So this is just my first impression upon seeing the wall here this evening. I'll have more impressions later on as I experience this, but it was a rather surreal moment here in Douglas, Arizona. All right, so yesterday I was lamenting the fact that on the U.S. Side of the border wall, upon seeing the whole infrastructure and seeing the Border Patrol agents, I felt like I was back in Afghanistan circa 2007, 2008 at Bagram Air Base when I was in the military. Man, just being on this side, on the Mexico side, is just a rebuttal of that defensive posture it's completely different. And it's really astonishing just to see it and experience it in person. And I think the only way that we can, or at least that I can understand this, is just getting down here. And I'm so grateful for this experience. And man, I'm really wanting to learn more and connect with the people here who are doing the work to help these people who have to go through this process and the difficulties associated with it. Man. So I thought it was just helpful to have that little video because I could talk about it, but it really makes a difference when you're down there. So first off, I want to say thanks, Doug, and everybody at Vote Common Good for putting this together, putting that border experience together. We've talked how you've been along the border wall riding bikes. I want to ask, we just heard my first impression. What was your first impression upon seeing the wall?
It was similar to yours. When I first saw the wall, it clearly communicates a military compound kind of idea. The way the Border Patrol operates along there, the way the government takes the property from the border wall to a certain, landmark outside the border wall, that they have patrols, that there's military-like barbed wire, serpentine wire, and it's aggressive. It's a very aggressive feeling. And when you stand at the border wall, like you show those pictures, on the U.S. side, and you see all that razor wire, you're not sure who's in prison. You're not sure what the wall is doing there, that somehow it creates this idea of danger. Mm-hmm. But when you talk to the people who live in the communities along that border wall, they regularly want to remind the rest of the country that their communities are more safe, not dangerous, and the wall is not something that's keeping their communities more safe. So you live in this really weird world where it's kind of an overwhelming, architectural accomplishment to build this wall for hundreds of miles in the middle of a desert. It's ridiculous and kind of awe-inspiring in this weird way. Mm-hmm. And then, last time we were there, I think you were there. Were you there when we went to the? Yeah, we went to the, and you could crawl under the wall, where you
Yes.
because the rain just washed
Yes.
out into the wall, so I couldn't get in there because my body's too long. But the other people with us, you did it too. I think.
I fit perfectly.
Yeah, you just
Which way did you go? South or
Both.
north?
from Mexico into the United States?
Yeah.
So there's this other point at which it's laughable, right? Because the water and the rains come and they crash the wall down. So it's all the feelings. It's overwhelming. It's ridiculous. It's a big accomplishment. It doesn't work. It's just an enigma at some levels, and it's $24 million a mile. So when you ask yourself, what are we choosing to spend our money on as a government for our immigration policies? And we're spending billions of dollars to put up steel barrier in the middle of a desert and a mountain on only 1/3, 1/4 of the entire border. It just makes almost no sense.
Yeah, well, you almost gave up part of the trivia question that I have
sorry
later,
about that.
so let's not get into
It's
the financial
going to be
costs
an
too much.
informed audience, yeah.
Shawn, I wonder, I was going down there, Doug asked me, so what do you think about this? And to be quite frank, I just couldn't almost wrap my head around it for a minute, because when I saw in that picture there's that Border Patrol truck, there was a kid in there, like my age when I was in the military, with all the gear on, and I was like, holy cow. It took me back just like in an instant. So I was just like walking around trying to think, okay, where am I? What is this? Is this necessary? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to hear, what would you think, or what were your impressions, or, upon seeing that, or, what would you think that you would see along the wall?
I have no actual concept of what I think I would have thought, because I haven't been there. The only thing I thought of near the end there, I wrote, when we do these things, I always jot down little, questions and stuff like that. But the one thing I said it when we were watching a little bit with that last photo of the entire wall, and I kind of thought, well, East Berlin, the Berlin Wall, and and everything, and just thinking, whoa, that's You know, it's a bit intense type of thing. And then I had written down in my notes, I was wondering, what did you see differences of where in communities of where the walls existed and where the walls didn't exist across the border type of thing?
Yeah.
Did you,
Well,
what was the you know?
That would be more of a question for Doug. So we were in Douglas, Arizona, then Nogales, Mexico, and you know that spans so long. But I mean, you have more experience going the whole route.
Yeah, we
of
did
the
a bike
border.
ride in 2021 from San Diego, California, down to
was
Brownsville,
that a
Texas.
Harley or was
No,
it
it was a
Honda?
bicycle.
Oh.
It was a pedal.
Without a motor.
Schwinn.
It was left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Rode our bicycles all along it, so we saw all the border wall. And that basically stops in Texas, and then it's the river, and the state of Texas doesn't have a border wall for the most part. There's a couple little spots, but for the most part, it doesn't have a border wall. And the people who build the border wall and the people who advocate for the border wall, who work inside immigration and customs, will tell you the border wall is not designed to stop people from entering. It's designed to slow them down or to redirect them. So they understand what's happening. And the problem is not at the spaces between the checkpoints. The problem is what happens at the checkpoints. When we went into Mexico, do you remember? We walked through, and people in the group, we had about 15 of us in our group, were shocked that they didn't ask us for anything.
Yep,
We
no
walked into
IDs.
Mexico. You just walk in. They check some bags, some people's bags. If they were a roller suitcase, they would check them. Anything else, they would let them go. I had my guitar with me. One time I went through, a guy opened up my guitar case, pulled it out, started playing. We sang a little song. It was unbelievable. We just walk in.
Yeah.
Americans, well, they don't know who you are. Anyone can walk from the U.S. into Mexico. So this whole thing about if there's open borders, there's not a country, pretty sure Mexico's a country. But then when you come back into the United States, they're pre-screening and restricting people. The only reason we need a border wall is because we don't have enough access for people to legally enter the country. There's not enough work permits. There's not enough visitation permits. There's not enough educational permits. We have decided in this country to have a quota system on how many people from any one country can come into the United States. And no more than 7% of all immigrants can come from any one country. That is madness. There's more people who live in the bordering countries, both the one on our immediate border and then 2 or 3 borders away, that want to come to the United States than people that live in Uruguay. But no more than 7% of people from Mexico, no more than 7% more people from Mexico can come than from Uruguay. This is a policy problem.
Yeah.
So we're solving a policy problem by building walls because people are trying to come to the country because there's not legal ways to come. If you apply for a visa to work in the United States from Mexico, it's 25-year waiting list.
Well, we'll get into
That's
that in a
insane.
second.
Quick question on that. Now, is that based on a Mexican resident that was born and raised there, or any immigrant that might have flown into Mexico trying to come across the border?
It's a
Well,
Mexican resident, and
Okay.
anybody born in Mexico. If you're from Guatemala, you're not getting in.
Okay. Now, the only reason I kind of asked that is because you had mentioned how easy it is to get south of the border opposed to getting north of the border. Doesn't that give a little bit of a red flag just of how many type of people they might be letting into Mexico to try to head north that might not be, Mexican descent or whatnot, but, anybody that might want to harm the United States flying into Mexico to come through there?
Sure. Look, if we were letting the people in the country who want to work in the country, have family in the country, and we weren't bogging the system down, we could direct all those resources
Yeah.
on making sure people who want to come in the country to do bad things aren't. But right now, they're all mashed up into one big pile, and it's like you're at the county fair trying to cross the border, and it makes no sense.
Well, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and it seems that the cartels are now down there, everything, they want it done that way. So
Yes.
they can sneak people through. If they bog down the system, you can't catch every single one.
The only people happy with U.S. border policy are the drug and human trafficking cartels that operate in Mexico.
Yeah.
And that's not me speaking. That's what we've heard from Border Patrol agents who tell us, we know that our policy, the way it's functioning, is in the best interest of the cartels. And why our lawmakers continue to perpetuate policies that benefit drug traffickers and human traffickers is something we should be asking every lawmaker.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
We'll get to that a little bit more, but I want to, before we move on too far, I want to say, or just talk about the opposite first impressions. So when I'll take us back to when I was at the wall, and I was telling you, okay, wow, I'm thinking of this, and you said, wait till we get to the Mexico side, it's gonna blow your mind, and like just like that. I mean, you could see a little bit of it, but there were murals upon murals, just as when I say it's a direct rebuttal of like this defensive position, that community was just painting. They had these animals on there, and they were animals that migrate, so from like a butterfly to a whale to like wild horses and a few other things, and then when I talk about seeing the people, there were just people living their lives. So it was driving to work. I mean, that road that we were that I showed there on the opposite side of the wall, that road led into a checkpoint to come into the United States, and it gets backed up every morning. People going to work. So I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. It was just like, oh, this is regular life down here.
That's a crazy thought to me, because I've thought about that like down at the Michigan, Indiana border, where you got Michigan City, which is not in Michigan. And like, well, if you're working there, you're going across state lines all the time. I couldn't imagine trying to come across country lines every single day to do work.
Yeah, going to work, families taking their kids to school.
And it used to be, just to be clear, it used to be, and we're talking 15 years ago, that basically the United States didn't overly patrol the border towns, because people on each side of the border towns, these are small little rural communities that often have a U.S. and a Mexico side. People would cross the borders all the time. They set the checkpoints 25 to 50 miles inside the United States. And that was the primary place where they would then check documentation. Not until the Republican Party decided to demonize immigration did they start pushing the immigration enforcement to the border itself. Because what people want to do is enter the country for commerce and for life and for activity. Like, you saw people who lived in Agua Prieta, Mexico, and would cross the border into Douglas, Arizona, these two small little cute little towns, to go to school or to go to work. Every day they would just cross, just like going from Indiana to Michigan. They would cross the line. And then it became a big political issue. And then the Obama administration decided to be tough on immigration so they could convince Republicans that they could pass some immigration reform if they were tougher on immigration. And of course, that deal all fell through and never happened. But what we've essentially done was moved our border enforcement from 50 miles interior to the United States to the border walls. And that's created a severe crisis. There are actual solutions to 40 to 60% of the clog that's happening at the border by just making a few adjustments. They're not happening because Democrats do not believe that the border is an issue that they can win on, and Republicans are convinced that the border is an issue they can win on. So there is no work being done on the process of the border. There are some bills, one put together by a common good candidate that's connected to Vote Common Good named Veronica Escobar, which addresses nearly all the issues for anybody who cares about this stuff. And every year it will come up. Currently now it will be defeated. She'll present a bill and it'll be defeated by the Republican-led House. When it was a Democratic-led House, it was passed, but then the Senate vetoed it. So that's how it's moved. That's how it's moved. So there are actual policy decisions that created the problem. It's often talked about that the problem at the border is from push issues happening in Central America, in Haiti, in Venezuela, in other places, and it's the push that's the problem. The problem isn't the flow into the country. The problem is the policies that govern the people who have to do Customs and Border Patrol. And these agents and the system is not designed to function when the policies are broken. And the policies are broken. And almost no one is willing to spend any political capital to try to solve them.
We'll talk about excuse me, a little bit what that looks like through a couple administrations. But I want to do a quick little trivia quiz here. So let's. The first question is, how many miles of new border wall has President Joe Biden built? I got a couple options for you. New border wall. Is it 0, 20, 50, 100, or I put a fun little number in here, -20, meaning President Biden tore down some of the wall? Anybody for 0, new wall? Nope. 20? No hands. 50? 100? What do you guys think? -20.
-20.
You think -20? You think President Joe Biden took down some
Seems
wall?
like it's something.
God, I wish he would tear down that wall. Joe
I think-
Biden,
Not
tear
Gorbachev.
down this wall.
Doug's looking at my notes here. The answer is, oh, you're not? Okay, 20. 20 miles. So this was, if you just do a little Google search, you'll find that, President Joe Biden put up 20 walls, or 20 miles of walls, because that was a budget item appropriated from the Trump administration. He says that, he couldn't refute it. He couldn't refute it. Like, it's something that had
Sounds
to
like
be
he
done.
fought that tooth and nail.
I don't know how
Oh,
far.
20 miles?
But
Oh,
under the
that's a
Biden
drop in the
administration,
bucket.
20 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was already in process, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Here's the
It's
next
a real
one.
technicality that it was the Biden administration that built that wall, but fair enough.
Under
It happened in those years.
the
Yes.
budget
Yes.
Congress appropriated during
Yes.
the Trump administration. So then, how many miles of new border wall did President Trump build? Well, I didn't give myself any options here. This was just like, how many do you think?
54.
Doug says 54.
Well, what's that game show at 8 o'clock in the morning? Price is Right.
Price is right. Are you going?
I'll go one higher. 55.
The answer is, for new border walls, the Trump administration built 52 miles of new in what's called primary border barriers. So there's this difference here, so the Trump has claimed, a lot that he's built almost 500 miles of border wall, which to a certain degree is true. But when we parse things out, there's like secondary and tertiary border walls, where meaning that they've kind of replaced some old barriers that were already there. But the fact remains is that only 52 new border walls where there was nothing was put up by the Trump administration.
How many new Border Patrol agents have they hired on either administration?
That's a good question.
Because I heard it earlier today. None.
That neither administration hired?
Nope.
Wow.
All right.
That's what I got from
Yeah.
an interview with a Border Patrol agent on the podcast I was listening to on the way here.
Interesting.
That they hadn't spent any money on new border agents.
We'll have to dig into that.
There's
Yeah,
a lot of
we'll have
them,
to
I'll tell
verify
you.
that,
There's
but-
a
Yeah.
lot of border agents.
Yeah. Well, so that was just a little kind of, it's out there, Trump saying that he's building, so many walls. Well, I was just wondering, okay, how much? Because I did see the
How
border
many
wall.
of those 52 miles that were built, how many of those miles were paid for by Mexico? Do you remember?
Oh, jeez.
I can't remember. I can't remember if it was
is it?
zero
They'll pay for the
or
wall.
if it was zero. I can't remember how many miles were paid for by Mexico.
Pretty sure we paid for a little bit.
There is that. All right,
I think I
so
heard somebody say that they got a question.
Yeah.
The ones that he replaced.
We actually witnessed the parts of the wall that have fallen down. Look, it's really, really hard to build walls in deserts and mountains. It's extraordinarily hard and makes no sense. But since Reagan said to Gorbachev, Mr.
Tear down this
Gorbachev,
wall.
tear down this wall, I think there were like 8 countries that had border walls between nations. Now there are like 32. So since 1983 or whenever, 82 when he said that, we've moved from a world that had almost no walls between nations to 32 or more countries that have walls between nations. So even though that was important to speak about East Germany, we've moved in the other direction globally. And the United States is just playing along in what a lot of other nations are doing in constructing physical barriers, as opposed to solving the problems of migration that policies in every country has. And that becomes the real question. We should argue about the wall because it's just designed as psychological warfare. And people who advocate the wall will tell you that. They build it to make it hard. They build it. When they built the wall from 14 feet to 21 feet and then added another 11 feet to make it 32 feet, the reason was they moved it to the height of a wall where the fall off the top of the wall would be lethal. That's the stated purpose for spending billions of federal dollars on making the wall taller, was it would scare people into not climbing it because they could die. That's a psychological warfare approach, which, pick your approach, but people who are crossing the border should be separated from those who want to come to the United States with legal authority from those who don't want to have legal authority. The problem is, so many people, 99% of people who want to come to the country with legal authority cannot access it. Whether they're asylum seekers, whether they're temporary visa workers, or whether they're people visiting their families. 99% of visas are declined. That's the problem. The primary notion in this country is, from most people, is there are too many migrants in the United States. And I just like to ask people a simple question. How many migrants should we allow every year in the country? Almost no one will give a number. I think it's 3 million. It's currently 685,000 that we allow in this country. Mm-hmm. We have 350 million citizens in the United States. If we allowed 3 million people in a year, not 685,000, but 3 million, 5 times as many, that would be less than 1% of the US population. You don't think we can absorb 1% increase in the US population, a country that has a declining population and failing towns all over America couldn't benefit from 1% national increase? It's insane that we're saying this thing that Republicans and Trump started all over. The country's full. We don't have room for anybody. Where are we going to put them? It's, I promise you, friends, drive around the country. It's empty. Most of the country is empty. And that's just what you see from the roads. If you were to get off the roads, it's all empty. Like, there's plenty of room in this country for more people. It's a policy problem, but it's also a perspective problem, that people think there's too many migrants in the United States. And if you ask them how many is the right number, which is another great question, right? Why don't we have the policies that we have? And secondly, what's the right number of migrants? People almost say, I don't know, and then Democrats will say more than we have, but I don't want to tell you a number. Republicans will say less than we have, but I don't want to tell you a number. Mm-hmm. That tends to be the difference, more or less than what we currently have. And that's not a sufficient response from the citizenry of the United States, in my view, for an issue that impacts our policies and our politics as much as this one does.
I got a good. Next time you're asking them about numbers and how many they should have, you should really ask them, how many migrants do you think it would take to get the amount of tax money that you would want to pass a law to move it?
Yeah, nice.
Because once you start throwing money in there, they might go, ooh, tax dollars. We can spend that money. We'll build a wall.
Oh, you had 3 million taxpayers to the system?
Oh yeah, they'll waste it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Some of those people, you know what they'll do? They'll buy a boat and they'll have somebody change out the interior to that boat.
Oh, I'll do that any day of the week.
You do that all day long,
yeah.
no matter where
I'll
they've
take
come
those
from.
phone calls. I'm not going to ask you your status when you walk through the door and say you want to buy something from me.
You'll say press 2 for Spanish, press 1 for English. Yeah, I don't care.
All right, let's take a little look at this video because it's so we went down into Nogales, Mexico, and visited with a nonprofit there run by a saint of a woman. No, you won't see here in this, but you will see 3 different families. And Doug, you interviewed them, and you'll hear a little bit about their stories. So let's roll that, Justice.
We're here at the House of Mercy in Nogales, Mexico. And this is a center for migrants who are fleeing violence in their home countries and waiting for an asylum hearing in the United States. And as we've been talking to people, it's become very clear that coming to the United States is a last resort. These people had homes, businesses, community, and they had to leave it all behind because their families' lives were in danger.
No estamos aquí por placer.
We didn't ever plan on going to the U.S. We had a good home, a good life. We were fine economically. It wasn't just, we woke up one day and said, hey, let's go to the U.S. I had a good life back home. I was a taxi driver and a police officer. It was going very well for us.
Were you at more risk because you were a police officer?
Trabajaba de policía y trabajaba de taxista, pero de policía dejé de trabajar por lo mismo que había mucho.
Yeah, I was working as a police officer and a taxi driver, but I stopped working as a police officer because of all the violence from these groups. Per day, there'd be about 50 deaths in these 3 towns that he worked in as an officer. And if you said anything as an officer, they'd shut you up by killing you.
Yeah.
Estando en Santana, como nos fue a buscar el secuestrador.
So we decided to go through the desert out of Santa Ana because someone from the kidnappers had come for us there. We spent 3 nights in the desert.
Sin agua, sin comida.
Without water or food.
Prácticamente sin nada.
With almost nothing.
This is in Mexico?
Sí, señor.
Sí.
Lo primordial para mí es.
The most important thing is protect my family.
Es muy duro.
It's very hard.
Cada uno lleva una profesión.
Each of us has a profession.
Yo soy mecánico.
I'm a mechanic.
Ella es enfermera.
She's a nurse.
Él es maestro de construcción.
He's a construction.
Mi hija es estilista.
Hair
Y mi esposa es chef de cocina.
And my wife is a chef. Kitchen.
Entonces, donde quiera que lleguemos, que nos
Want to
brinde
find
la
somewhere
oportunidad de
where we'll
trabajar.
have the opportunity to work. We have what we need to support ourselves. Somewhere where we won't have to give up tranquility, calmness.
Tengo muchos problemas en Ecuador.
I had a lot of problems with the mafia. I had my business, and I wouldn't pay them the money that they demanded of me.
Después de eso, yo tenía mi moto taxi, me la incendiaron.
I had a motor taxi, and they set that on fire, and then they put a grenade in my business.
Pero
Then they got involved with my son. They put a pistol to his head and threatened
y le
him.
dije que no les iba a pagar.
And since my son is special to me, I couldn't do anything else but to flee.
I would imagine you never thought your life would bring you to this place.
No, porque éramos felices.
No, because we
Yo
were
tenía mi
happy.
trabajo,
Yeah.
ella tenía su trabajo, teníamos nuestra casa y ya no tenemos nada.
Because
No.
I had my job, she had her job, we had our house, and now we have nothing. Nothing.
Es duro.
It's hard.
All right, so that's just a little kind of taste of what we went through. And I'll just, add one thing real quick. It's, Doug, listening to you do these interview with these families. I'm kind of hanging around. I'm behind the camera. Dan's got the camera. I'm behind. And I'm, listening to the father. The father is most often telling the story. But I'm looking at the kids,
Yeah.
like 11, 8. And I'm seeing, as one story is being told, this one girl, she was listening to her father retell the story about how he was on the brink of being murdered.
Yeah.
And I had to walk away so many times because it was just so much to hear, to really personalize these stories that we hear a lot on the media. So, I mean, what was your, I don't know, what were some of your first stories or impressions upon meeting these people? I mean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, when you sit with asylum seekers in a Mexico center where they're being cared for the 10 months to 14, 15 months, which is kind of the average it takes somebody who's presented themselves at the U.S. border and asked for asylum to get an appointment to have that claim processed. That's how it works. This center takes in about 150 people in Nogales, Mexico. There are thousands more that don't have access to a center like this, so they just live on the street and are under the influence and control of cartels, drug cartels that use sex and drugs as their primary selling point. So our US policy tells people who are seeking asylum, and in the migration world, there are a lot of different reasons people are seeking migration. Might be work, might be family in the United States, or it could be asylum. Asylum seekers are a particular category. Normally, the United States would let an asylum seeker wait for that asylum meeting in the United States. We've made the policy during the Trump administration and during the Biden administration to let them remain in Mexico, which is insane. These are people that have left dangerous situations, have nothing, and we're letting them just sit on the streets in small Mexican towns for 10 months to 14 months average. It's wild to consider that we think that's the way this ought to go. When you hear the stories that they're sharing, it is utterly heartbreaking. Every one of the people we talked to in those interviews were long-established families that never thought they would leave their houses in Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and then within a very short period of time, some cartel activity happened in their town. They got on the wrong side of it for trying to do the right thing, sometimes in politics, sometimes not having enough money to pay for the extortion rates that were being asked, sometimes for knowing too much as a police officer, and their lives are threatened, and within hours they have to pack everything up and make a run for it, and they have nowhere to go. Can you imagine? And then if it was any one of us and we got to the US-Mexico border and we thought, if I get into the United States, my family could be safe. But you know what? I can't because US policy says it's the wrong thing to do. There's a point at which the immorality of our policies start to clash into the experience of these people, and that's what people are experiencing. All of these folks, they're doing it the right way. So if you say, why don't they do it the right way, you better know what the right way means before you tell people to do it the right way.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
Shawn,
why don't you come like my parents did at Ellis Island? Well, they are, and the right way to come into the United States for some of them is to cross a river or climb over a wall or to wait for an appointment. And all of these people were waiting for appointments. And fortunately, nonprofit groups have put together enough support for these people where they can be safe for the 10 to 14 months. I think all those groups, can you remember, it was something like more than 10 months, I think those people had all been waiting.
Yeah, it was 8 to 10. Shawn, you had an interesting question, you know, when you got here this afternoon about, do you remember it, about the migrants crossing from, so we talked to families from Colombia and El Salvador, and there's, you know, countless others from, you know, Central America and South America, about going from one country to the other.
Well, I was listening earlier that the laws on asylum seekers is if you're leaving a country like the Ukraine or whatnot, that the first country that you enter that is an asylum country is where you're supposed to stay and get your asylum. So if you're in the Ukraine and you're flying to Germany and then Spain and then to Mexico City and then crossing the border, technically you were supposed to stop at Germany because that was an asylum country type deal. That's what I was listening to that going, okay, well that's a small thing that you don't think about, is that there are other countries other than our own that is asylum-seeking countries. So it makes it questionable sometimes when they bypass those countries to fly into Mexico and then decide to try to make it across the border. But that's when the Border Patrol has different questions that reference, you know, are you an asylum seeker? Or I'm trying to think of the other phrase that they went with, which is referencing, do you feel in danger? Not necessarily asking for asylum, but do you fear for your life?
Like a refugee status?
But the cartels have been using that because we talk about this stuff in our politics all the time, that they're starting to know what we do north of the border to try to pass those questions. So they'll sell, you know, when you get across and they ask you this, and if you want to be asylum, you say this, this, and this, but we want $5,000 type thing. And if you don't do it right, we keep your wife or something like, you know.
Yeah, look, when you get there and you realize that all those people not only had to leave their homes, but then had to negotiate with murderous drug cartels on the way, and then frankly, to hear then people like, oh, people are just using asylum as an excuse to come in the United States. Just come with us to Nogales, Mexico, sit with these families, look them in the eye and say, really, you're just wanting a free pass to the United States, aren't you?
Well, that's not quite the point that I was kind of making,
No,
but it helps. But like we were talking about earlier with the cartels, that type of thing helps the cartels out to bog down the system by putting a lot of bogus asylum seekers in there to bog down the system so they can try to sneak whatever they're trying to get through.
Yeah,
so
look,
it's not trying to take credibility away from the actual people that are, but if they're trying to sell off people going, you can get in the United States by asking this question, this question, this question, it really bogs down the system, especially if the government's not putting any extra money into trying to create an easier access point.
Yeah.
You know, or funding more, border agents or lawyers or anybody else that they need to actually process this influx of immigrants and whatnot.
Yeah, the cartels are not using human beings to smuggle things into the country. The human being is the thing they're smuggling into the country.
Yeah.
They're not carrying contraband. They're not carrying anything else. There's been no definable terrorist plots that have come through the U.S.-Mexico border. Those are not all those things that are, which you should be thinking about. I'm glad people are thinking about them. I'm glad they're doing research on them, have found out that's not happening. That's not a smart way. You come to the border and then ask yourself, would this be the way you would put together a terrorist plot? It's really not. Like
no, the one that I was referencing to, as far as they try to give you the answer, is a lot of times the cartels are saying, oh, to get over there, we can provide you yada yada yada. It's going to cost you $10,000. Yeah. Well, I don't have $10,000. Okay, well, we're going to tell you this. Once you're on the north side of the border, we're going to have somebody that's going to get you a job and this and that. They don't understand that the job that they're having is somebody on the border they aren't going, hey, go home, work at Home Depot, because I got a task for you. Yeah. You owe us money. You owe the cartel money, and this is what you're going to do. Yes. Because you left your wife on the south side of the border. She's ours now, and if you don't follow through. That's
exactly how it works.
That's the kind of reference I wasn't thinking of, they're, bringing things across to get through. But if they can get people through to do things on the north side of the border, they have, which is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to think about, to separate from spouses and children and stuff like that.
Too many U.S. businesses allow people to work in their factories and in their system that they should know are in situations where they're not safe.
Yeah.
So if we approached this entire issue as a collective, like talk to business, especially agricultural business and manufacturing business in the United States. You talk to Border Patrol, you talk to the people who know what's happening with the cartels to solve this problem. These issues could be solved. In the United States, the reason we don't, though, I contend, is because we think we can't take that many people in the United States. Like, we still, fundamentally, you had 1,000 people in a field and you threw a baseball in the middle of the field, you'd hit somebody who thinks, we can't take that many people in the country. Like, that's just the general thought of people in the United States. We're full. What are we going to do with them? Who's going to pay for them to go to school? I mean, I've talked to the most liberal people that I know, and they're like, well, if they come here, who's going to pay for them to go to school, and who's going to pay for their
taxpayer money?
They're going to get jobs. Like this. So we're not quite sure if the problem with immigrants is they're going to take our jobs or they're not going to have jobs.
I'm more worried about AI taking our jobs.
We're not quite sure what the problem is. Which one do you think?
I'm sorry. I'm more worried about AI taking our jobs.
Yeah, you're more worried about
than somebody. The joke's going to be when we open up the border, then none of us have jobs.
Yeah, none of us have jobs.
Well, let's close it here for like our last 2 minutes. So, going down to the border and taking people down there and going down myself, it's to not only experience what it's like, but to come away with some kind of idea of what to do. So can you help us? What's your take on solving the border issues in 2 minutes or less. What needs to be done?
Small ask. It's a small ask.
I do think one of the more important things is a social movement that says policy's the problem when it comes to the border. Right now, if you're conservative, you say migrants are the problem. If you're a progressive, you say border patrol is the problem. Policy is the problem. And we have to address the policies. And we have decided as a nation that we will tolerate this issue not being solved. So if we were to get serious about solving the problem at the border, we would pass policies that would solve it. What was presented to Congress, sort of accepted in theory by the Biden administration and then rejected by the House of Representatives that accepted it, was insufficient to solve the problem, to be clear. It was nowhere close to it. We should address the fundamental issues. And a social movement that puts the onus on the people who make our laws would be the movement we should have. Solve this at the policy level. Stop making nonprofits, migrants, and do-gooders in the United States fill in the gaps for broken policy.
Sounds well
Focus
said
on
to me.
policy. Doug, we thank you for your time this evening.
Well, thank you for your servitude.
That's Doug Pagitt, Executive Director of Vote Common Good and a leading voice for progressive Christianity.
Thank you, sir.
And if you're
Careful down the
interested
steps.
in connecting to his work, you can go to Vote Common Good, or you can just talk to him right there in the audience. We're going to take a little musical interlude. Is interlude the right word?
I think interlude would be fine. Intermission?
Intermission?
Musical
Yeah.
intermission?
Dan's going
I
to
hear it.
serenade us a minute, and we're ready for our second segment. Take it away, Dan.